Now, crypto may never be the same again if the world's second largest holder of Bitcoin fails. And yeah, we're looking at you, DCG. Now, DCG and its subsidiary Grayscale are in some seriously hot water after Cameron Winklevoss of Gemini published an open letter on Twitter describing the potentially unethical financial practices going on under the DCG umbrella. And obviously, a monsoon ensued. So let me end this epic series by showing you just how deep the DCG rabbit hole goes. And you're never going to believe who is likely to make the decision as to what the ultimate future will be for all of Grayscale's 635,235 Bitcoins. So strap in, prepare to gaze upon one of the most terrifying crypto stories in 2023. But obviously, before I drop all those bombs on you, make sure that you smash that like button for me. Make sure you hit subscribe, boom, bang on that notification bell. Comment anything that you want in the relevant sections. I appreciate it. Now, let's end this series with the proverbial bang that it has been building up towards. The crypto industry giant Digital Currency Group and the tangle of its wholly owned subsidiary have been a massive driving force for crypto going back to its earliest stages. And in the previous episodes of this series, I attempted to decode and unravel the web of deceit that was revealed by the Winklevoss open letter. And if you don't know, go back and watch the series. It's all there. I showed you how the now bankrupt Three Arrows Capital had become a go-between for Genesis and DCG to arbitrage the premiums on Grayscale's Gbtc trust. I explained how DCG's company Grayscale had become a cash cow from both fee generation and asset accumulation at the expense of Genesis, who now has provoked the wrath of one of the largest sources of investments: institutions. Gemini's CEO Cameron Winklevoss believes that Genesis owes the users of his platform $900 million that has not yet been paid off. And facing pressure from his wealthy clients, Cameron felt that it was time to hold not only the proverbial feet of Genesis to the fire, but also the feet of Genesis' parent company, DCG, as well. To do this, Cameron published an open letter that described his knowledge of the self-enriching dealings going on behind the scenes under DCG's watch that could involve the illegal financial practice of commingling assets, and he posted all of this on Twitter. Now, this episode will also cover the other revelation that was fully revealed by Cameron's letter. That is, the question of how the heck the company that owns the second most Bitcoin in the entire world plans to solve this PR nightmare without selling hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin onto the free market, thus tanking the price. And clearly, I'm not in the head of DCG's CEO, Barry Silbert, to be able to find that out. But I will show you a few possible scenarios from the best to the worst of how this debacle could play out. Now, the absolute best case scenario would be for Bitcoin to reach a new all-time high and then establish a steady rate of growth past 9% per year. Now, I should say that this is best case scenario for Barry Silbert, but not necessarily the future of crypto. Or your moon bags. A 70K Bitcoin would more than deliver the liquidity needed for Genesis to pay off its debt and for Cameron to let go of the curtain he started to pull back to the public. But here's the thing. The whole point of a bear market is for all the snakes and fraudsters to be burned away. If Barry Silbert is orchestrating some sort of Bitcoin farming arbitrage system that screws Gbtc holders and only enriches himself, then his scheme should be fully exposed, charged, taken to trial in the US, and the funds returned to the investors. And this could all be at the peril of the Bitcoin price. A 70K Bitcoin would indeed make this PR nuclear explosion go away by the next media cycle, but it's not the fix that the obvious fundamental problem of Barry Silbert allegedly leading the world's next multi-million-dollar crypto Ponzi scheme would solve. But let's assume that Bitcoin does not print a new all-time high before Genesis is forced to go bankrupt. What are some of the next possible outcomes that we could expect? The next best outcome, in my opinion, is definitely possible, but it's unlikely, and it gets us into some nasty territory because the SEC has to get involved and enters the chat. You see, Barry Silbert, CEO of Digital Currency Group, has been actively involved in lobbying the SEC to allow Grayscale to convert its Gbtc trust into a full-fledged Bitcoin spot ETF. It is fair to say that Silbert and his organization have been the top of the industry leaders working to educate regulators and lawmakers about the benefits of a spot Bitcoin ETF. Silbert's effort have fallen on deaf ears though. Gensler has especially deaf ears when it comes to spot ETFs for Bitcoin right now. But a BTC conversion to a spot ETF is another excellent way out for Silbert now that he is under pressure from the industry and regulators. The short version of this reason why actually goes back to the difference between the trust and the ETF investment vehicles. The shares in an ETF are technically redeemable for a portion of the underlying asset that the ETF tracks. A trust is not redeemable, and that presents an enormous problem for Barry Silbert now that the pressure is on. Until now, Barry has been winning in a game that investors in GBTC may not have even known that they were playing, much less losing. So when you buy a share of GBTC, you are buying a share of a trust that is non-redeemable for anything other than the present cash value per share. Now, add in the more than 30% discount rate that GBTC maintains on average to the Bitcoin spot price, and you have a recipe for a whole lot of hodl-in from GBTC investors. And Barry has had holders trapped because if they sell, they will certainly be selling for about a 30% loss. So they just keep holding, and Barry runs his arbitrage and stuffs even more Bitcoin into the Grayscale trust. But the BTC bear market has already been so aggressive that it has caused the collapse of Luna, Celsius, FTX, and Cameron Winklevoss over at Gemini does not want to be the next, so he is forced to make one of the biggest debtors pay up to the tune of $900 million. So essentially the lights have been turned on, and Barry is caught with his pants down, and Cameron and all of those GBTC investors want their initial investment back. Never mind the interest, they just want their money. Now more than ever, Barry needs Gary Gensler to approve a spot ETF so that GBTC investors can be made whole and so that DCG can pay out Gemini. And this is one of those proverbial times where the SEC could potentially come in and save the day. But let me say this, it is not actually clear that GBTC investors would be made completely whole, but they would be able to redeem their GBTC for Bitcoin. But in what proportion to their initial investment would be nice to know. In any case, Gary Gensler is very unlikely to approve the spot ETF, especially now that DCG could be ready to give in and start selling some of its own Bitcoin. Now we're getting into the not so good scenarios for DCG and the crypto community as a whole. According to Grayscale's latest SEC filing in September of 2022, the firm is backing their GBTC trust with over 635,000 Bitcoins, which is worth about $13.3 billion as of the recording of this video. So if all of that liquidity got dumped onto the market, you know what would happen to the price of Bitcoin, right? All out carnage, that's what. It would not quite spell the end altogether, but Bitcoin might see 4 digits again. Luckily, it would not be legally possible for Grayscale to sell all of that Bitcoin, so they are unlikely to choose that route. Though trusts suck compared to ETFs, you can at least trust that the trust manager can't just sell the underlying asset of the trust and then walk away from said trust. Did I mention that there's a trust involved? But DCG does hold 9.67% of GBTC's total shares. That means that it could, in theory, sell 67 million shares in the GBTC market that trades less than 4 million shares per day. Whoa. But by law, DCG is bound to sell no more than 1% of its shares every quarter. So it could sell it all, just not at the same time. So we're safe from a Bitcoin price tanking perspective there too, which leaves just one more possibility in the cards, but again brings Gary Gensler back into the picture and gives him all of that deciding power. And I told you at the beginning of this, you would not believe who is holding all the powerful cards with this. So let me give you some backstory for this one. Valkyrie is a company like Grayscale that has issued compliant Bitcoin investment vehicles for institutional investors. Valkyrie has offered to file a request to the SEC to become the GBTC new manager through a rule called Regulation M. And from what I understand, if this request were to be approved, the GBTC holders would have a one-time chance to sell their shares for the price of the net asset value, or the NAV, which would make the investors whole. Now, Gary Gensler would have to approve this though, and it is not clear that he would. Therein lies the issue. But it does seem like it could be more likely for him to approve a Regulation M than a Bitcoin spot ETF. I will admit that. And let's be real, Valkyrie may have just scored big time with this offer, but we will have to wait and see. Through all of this, you may be considering selling your crypto in anticipation of all of this blowing up and tanking the industry. Because let's be real, there's bad news coming out almost every single day. Things are imploding. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm waiting to buy in lower, especially lower than where Bitcoin price is now, but I hope the DCG filing for bankruptcy is not the reason why. Remember, DCG is extremely well connected in DeFi and TradeFi. DCG is invested in BitGo, Kraken, Bitflyer, CoinJar, Ledger, Etherscan, Shapeshift, Second Market, Zcash, Decentraland, Blockstack, Ripple, and Coinbase. DCG has also been invested in by big banks like HSBC, Citibank, financial institutions like MasterCard and NASDAQ. If DCG goes down, the bears will rule the charts for months and will do this ruthlessly without any mercy. So you may be considering selling now even for a loss. Well, while I don't recommend selling for a big loss, I strongly discourage anyone from selling into USDT, because if you go and watch my series on USDT, which let's be real, you probably should, they're one of the other corrupt organizations that I've covered in the past that I don't think the cards play out for them well in the future. And that's a whole other rat's nest, but go check that series out if you happen to give a F. And that's all I have for you for this series. But if you enjoyed content like this, make sure you go watch the old ones if you didn't see those. And obviously, make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure you hit subscribe. Boom! Bang on that notification bell. Comment anything that you want in the relevant sections. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for showing up to this video. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, everyone.